dancing twisters down an alley.
If you like what you see here, please donate to ModernPagan.tv. Just go to our website,
So I promise you a Druid, and a Druid you shall have.
Hello.
Tony Fleming. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me this evening.
Well, we're excited to have somebody on to talk about a tradition that isn't Wicca, you know. We're all Wiccans and very, very, I have a lot of great feelings about it, but we know the community is a whole lot broader than that. So you, a Denver native, you're one of those rare people who is actually a Denver native.
All my life.
Yeah?
They always say a rolling stone gathers no moss, and I guess I just like moss. I never made it very far away, you know. So.
Well, you know, the moss and the mistletoe and the oak, and that all kind of works together, doesn't it?
Exactly, and my wife frequently says I'm a rockhead, so it all works out.
Tony, how did you get involved in paganism, and when was it, approximately?
You know what? We spoke about that last evening, and it actually made me kind of curious, so I went back and looked in my old Book of Shadows, and actually, it was about 12 years ago. I started practicing paganism in 2001, and it was kind of a long path. You know, there was a certain point when I just realized Christianity wasn't for me. It was actually about the time I actually started reading the Bible, and I was like, I don't know, a lot of this just isn't really quite clicking. So, you know, I always felt the presence of it divine. It was just for a long time I didn't really have a good way to relate to it. And kind of completely in an unrelated manner, I started reading everything I could get my hands on about the Celts, because, you know, there's a good deal of Irish and Scottish in my background, so I wanted to learn more about, you know, my ancestors and
Your roots.
yeah, exactly. And then at a point in my life where I was having some troubles, it was a very difficult experience. One night I had this very vivid dream where Kurnanos came to me and you know, gave me some words of wisdom that just, you know, really helped out. And I woke up the next morning feeling completely clear-headed and just way better about everything. But must be the Scottish, being very, very stubborn. You know, I didn't relate to it as an actual experience of, you know, a god. I just kind of thought of as an archetypal visitation, the crazy stuff I've been reading. And, you know, I was still kind of religiously very up in the air. And then I was volunteering at the library, and I was just shelving some books in the metaphysical section, and I ran across a book by Dane McCoy. I think it was called Celtic Myth and Celtic Gods or something to that effect.
Yeah, he's written so much about the Celts.
Yeah, and you know, it just looked interesting, so I kind of leafed through it. I was always interested in anything Celtic, and you know, I'd read of the pre-Christian religions, but it had never really occurred to me that you could, you know, follow paganism as a religion in modern times. And, you know, I read it through and it's like, well, this just really seems right. So, you know, I started practicing, and relatively soon after that I joined the College of Wicca and Old Lore, which was a really good, you know, basic training for things. And the rest, as they say, is sort of history.
Well, so in the beginning, you studied Wicca. When was it that you decided that Druidism was more your path?
Well, I want to say I have every respect for Wicca, but it just wasn't the path for me. You know, I find that Wicca has a lot of influences from ceremonial magic and kind of later spirituality from, you know, Western mysticism standpoint, you know, some influences from, you know, the East and things like that. And it just wasn't for me. I was looking for a path that was more related to the pre-Christian European practices. So, at the time, Wicca was mostly completely fulfilling what I needed, but it just wasn't quite there. And, I kind of started practicing more on my own and kind of bringing, my knowledge of the ancient Celtic ways into a modern context. And then kind of by accident almost, I was just surfing the internet and I ran across the Ardnariocht Fine, which is quite a...
You have to say that again and slowly.
Okay. Ardnariocht Fine, which basically in Irish means a druidry of our own.
And everybody calls it ADF because
Yes.
it's a little hard to say.
And it was like, wow, I looked over their website and I thought, this is the organization that I would have put together if I were smart enough and organized enough to do so. It was just kind of exactly what I was looking for. It just fit like a glove.
Isaac Bonowitz started the ADF in 1983, and I went online last night and did some research, read through some of his writings and other members of the ADF's writings. I was actually, what struck me was how much like Wicca it is. There are a lot of similarities and a lot of parallels between ADF practice. For one thing, it's a fairly broad practice. You were telling me last night that it's mostly Celtic, but that the ADF allows the observance of and work with any of the Indo-European religions, including the predecessors of Hinduism, including Vedic, the ancient Vedic gods. That's pretty broad. Well, of course, nowadays many Wiccans have become more eclectic and broader as well. Originally that was not true, but it's more true nowadays. So the more I was reading about the ADF, the more I was thinking, gee, these guys are not all that different from us. In fact, you even celebrate the same holidays, the same rule of 8.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Wiccans would be able to come, and not just theoretically, you can come. Our 8 high days are open to anyone who wishes to come. But yes, a Wiccan coming to our high days would feel completely comfortable. I mean, there are some ritual differences, but no. I mean, one of the things that Isaac Bonowitz always said is there's, more that glues us together in the general pagan community than separates us. So, it's...
So Ostara is coming up. What are you going to do for Ostara? So kind of take us through what your ritual would be.
Oh, that's a fascinating question. Okay, well, it's going to be kind of a long answer. Forgive me. That kind of brings into... To answer that, I should probably explain that one thing about ADF is they have a very specific liturgy. Now, that kind of freaks some people out. It sounds very Catholic and very staid and very, the same. But essentially what that means is the ADF liturgy is a pretty broad framework, a skeleton, if you will, upon which you can hang many different things. You'll see in the ADF that at each ritual we give first offering to the Earth Mother, either in general or in by some specific name. And they kind of added that in because that was very specific to Greco-Roman ritual. They always offer to the Earth Mother first. And then, rather than cast circle with the elements as is common in Wicca, ADF uses more of the common Indo-European cosmology. It's not that different from Wicca, actually, except that instead of the 4 elements, we recreate the cosmos with the waters of chaos and the fire representing the sky powers, the sort of organizing generative force, and the tree, which represents the world tree, which connects all the worlds and also is sort of the earth representation. From a religious standpoint, we believe that by doing these things, you actually recreate the cosmos in microcosm within your ritual. You sort of, with the aid of the gods, you recreate the cosmos as pure and as new as it was at the beginning. Excuse me. And proceeding from that, you always invoke what we call the three kindred, the gods in general, the nature kin, and the ancestors. As we all probably know, ancestor worship was very common amongst many Indo-European peoples. The Norse had a version of it, and the Romans referred to them as the Lares. And we also view the ancestors in a broader sense. We view, we also honor and worship cultural ancestors as well. Like, I would consider George Washington and Thomas Jefferson as cultural ancestors. And, of course, the land whites. It's a pretty common belief we all have, so I won't go too much in on that. And also, typically in our rituals, we'll have a patron of the right. Oh, I should step back a pace. One thing in ADF, we are a very eclectic organization. In fact, some groves, they will, rotate what pantheon is worshipped, ritual to ritual. But one thing we don't believe in, we believe that each pantheon represents kind of its own cosmos, its own truth as it relates to that culture.
So don't mix them up.
Exactly. So when we do a Celtic ritual, we honor the Tuatha De Danann in general, the general Celtic gods, and then we'll also typically have a patron deity as well. Now, kind of more onto the point about Eoster. When I started the Grove, I'm mostly a Celtic practitioner, and, I was starting the Grove, so what the heck, my pick.
So when was that? When did you start your own Grove?
2009.
Okay.
And
this is Silver Branch Golden Horn.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. But what we do is we also celebrate the Norse pantheon. It was basically started by myself and my wife, Georgia, and a friend of ours, John, and he is mostly a Norse practitioner. So what we decided to do was to make it a Celtic and Norse grove, which fits really well because, culturally they're so geographically close and so similar that they're practically first cousins. So we kind of alternate. Now, in bulk, we celebrated in Celtic style, and we had Druid, commonly called Bridget, as our patron. And this coming ritual at Eoster will celebrate Nerthus. So she's going to be the patron of our
Cool.
And
can we get the website up? Or
They have the.
oh, they have it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Cool.
I'm kind of monopolizing the conversation, but before I forget, one other thing I wanted to mention was a common factor in ADF worship is we believe very much in offering. You could say sacrifice, but it's kind of a loaded term, so we don't say that too.
Means to make
often.
sacred.
Yeah,
That's what
exactly.
the word really means.
And the way I relate to it is like, in the Christian belief system, the Judeo-Christian belief system, you have this belief in a all-powerful God, and it's enough to simply make prayers, at least in our modern belief on this. But I've always believed at a gut level, and this is one of the things that really clicked with me with ADF, that really to truly honor the gods and to truly get their attention, you have to make offering. They're greater beings than ourselves. They expect gifts.